There is no urgency, Helena. We have all the time in the world. The Duke of Calverstone said it the way he said most things to her, lightly, certainly, without lifting his eyes from the morning's correspondence. Ignatius had said some version of those words for 6 years now, and each time the saying of them cost him nothing. The wedding could wait until after the harvest, then until after his brother's affairs were settled, then until the new wing was finished, then until the next session of Parliament had run its course. There was always a reason, and the reasons were always sensible, and Helena Ardell had always accepted them with that grave, patient nod he had come to expect, and if he were honest, to depend upon. He depended upon a great many things about her: her presence at his table when he came down late, her steady hand with the household ledgers his own steward muddled, the way she remembered which tenants were ailing and which fields lay fallow, the letters she answered in his name so gracefully that no one ever guessed they were not his own. He depended upon the way a man depends upon the floor beneath his feet, without thought, without thanks, because it had never once given way. That morning he finished his coffee, kissed the air somewhere near her temple, and rode out to inspect the eastern boundary with not a single uneasy thought in his head. When he returned at dusk, the house was wrong. He could not at first have said how. The lamps were lit, the fires banked, the supper laid, but there was a stillness in the hall that did not belong to it, a hush like a clock that has stopped. The footman who took his coat would not meet his eye. And on the table in the entrance hall, set squarely upon a folded square of paper, lay the ring. Ignatius knew that ring. He had put it on her finger himself, 6 years past, in the garden, half laughing, certain even then that the formal vows were a mere formality to be attended to at leisure. It was his grandmother's ring, a plain old garnet in worn gold, and it had sat on Helena's hand so long that he had stopped seeing it, the way he had stopped seeing so much. He picked up the paper. Her hand, of course, that fine even script he knew better than his own. It said only that she thanked him for 6 years of his hospitality and his name's protection, that she wished him every happiness, and that she had gone to her aunt in the north. It was not angry. That was the thing that stopped his breath. There was no reproach in it anywhere, no plea, no demand. It was the letter a guest writes when she leaves a house, courteous and final, and it closed a door so quietly that he stood there a long moment simply listening to the silence where she had been. "When," he said, and found his voice unsteady, "when did she go?" "This noon, Your Grace." The housekeeper had come to stand in the doorway, her own eyes red. The trap took her to the coaching inn. The northern mail was due at 3. 3. He had been standing in a turnip field at 3, frowning at drainage. He had been certain of the floor beneath his feet. He went up to her rooms because he could not help himself, and that was worse. He had imagined he would find them stripped bare, the dramatic emptiness of a woman who had fled in passion. They were not. The books he had given her over 6 years were there still, each one dutifully read. She had taken only what was hers, and not so much as carried off the books, as though even now she would not presume upon him. He had given her his name's protection and his table, and his endless promises of later. He had never once given her the only thing she wanted, which was to be chosen, today, ahead of the harvest and the brothers' affairs, to be, for 1 hour, more urgent than a turnip field. He did not sleep. He walked the house instead, and the house, which he had thought of for years as his, revealed itself in the lamplight to be hers. The flowers in the blue room that were always fresh, she had cut them. The chair drawn to the best light in the library, she had sat there to do his accounts. The small kindnesses laid through every room like a thread he had never bothered to follow to its source. He found the source now, walking from room to room, and the source was a woman who had loved him steadily for 6 years and asked for nothing, and to whom he had given, in return, the endless promise of later. By morning the floor had given way entirely. His first instinct was the instinct of a duke, to send, to dispatch riders, to write to her aunt, to command her gently back as one commands a tenant or recalls a ledger. He got as far as drawing the paper toward him before he saw the ring still lying there, and understood, with a clarity that shamed him, that a summons was the one thing in the world that would lose her forever. She had not left because she doubted his power to keep her. She had left because his power had never once troubled itself to choose her. A man who sent for her now would only be confirming what she had finally, after 6 years, allowed herself to believe, that she was a fixture of his estate and not the love of his life. So he did not send, he went. But first he did a thing he had not done in years. He counted the cost honestly. He had not jilted her. That was the lie he had comforted himself with. A jilting was a single cruel act. What he had done was worse, because it was 1,000 small ones, none of them cruel enough to notice, each of them telling her the same quiet thing. You are not urgent, you will keep, there is no hurry about you. In the only language that ever truly counts, the language of what a man troubles himself to do. She had finally believed him and gone. The astonishing thing, he thought, his head in his hands in the grey dawn, was not that she had left. It was that she had stayed 6 years. He went north himself, in a hired chaise, because he could not bear the slow ceremony of his own carriage. He had let 6 of her best years run through his fingers like sand, while he attended to matters that could every one of them have waited a fortnight for a wedding. He arrived at the small grey town in the dales travel-stained and 3 days unshaven, looking nothing at all like the Duke of Calverstone. The aunt who answered the door looked him up and down with a frankness no servant of his would have dared, and did not invite him in. She's well, the aunt said, before he could speak. She's better, in fact, than I've seen her in years. You'll forgive me if I don't fall over myself to undo that. I don't ask you to undo it. He had rehearsed nothing. The words came on their own. I ask only to be allowed to say to her, once, a thing I should have said the first morning and every morning since. If she will not hear it, I will go, and I will not trouble her again. You have my word, and whatever else I have squandered, I have never broken that. The aunt studied him a long moment. Something in his ruin must have satisfied her, for she stepped back and let him into a cold front parlour and went to fetch her niece, and the Duke of Calverstone stood twisting his hat in his hands like a boy. Helena came in composed. That was the first thing he saw, and it undid him as nothing else could have. She was not weeping, not pale, not waiting to be persuaded. She was wearing a plain grey gown he did not know, her hair simply done, and she looked at him with a gentle steadiness that contained no hope at all, only courtesy, the very look he had seen her give 100 dull guests at his table. She had taken her love back from him and folded it away, and she was offering him, instead, the polished surface she offered strangers. Your Grace, she said, you should not have come so far. I have come 6 years too short, he said, and so I will come however far I must. She did not answer. She waited. He had imagined she would make it easier. She did not, and he honored her for it. I will not insult you, he said slowly, by pretending I have only just realized what you are. I have always known. That is the worst of it, Helena. I knew there was no truer heart in England, no steadier hand, no one who saw me as I am and stayed all the same. And I treated the knowing as a thing I could draw upon forever without ever once paying it. I told myself we had all the time in the world. His voice cracked, and he let it. We did not. You had given me 6 years of your one life, and I spent them as though they were small coin, and I would have gone on spending them until they were gone, because I never once let myself imagine the morning you would stop. A faint colour rose in her cheek. She held very still. I do not ask you to come back to that house, he went on. That house wronged you. I wronged you in it daily for 6 years. I ask only whether there is any road by which I might earn what I have spent so long failing to deserve. Not a wedding some day. Not a promise to be kept after the harvest. He drew a breath. There is a church in this town. I passed it coming in. I have a special license in my coat. I went to the bishop before I came to you, because I will never again offer you later in place of now. I am asking you to marry me this week. Not because it is convenient, because it is the only thing in my life I have ever been certain could not wait. The silence in the cold little parlor stretched long enough that he thought he had lost her. Her eyes had filled, but she did not let the tears fall, and she did not soften, not yet, and he understood that the price of 6 years of later was that she would not believe him merely because he had ridden north and made a pretty speech. He had taught her too well what his certainties were worth. You will want time, he said quietly, to see whether I mean it. Take all of it. I will stay at the inn and call when you permit and not before. I will court you, Helena, as I should have courted you at the first, not as a thing I own and have neglected, but as the one woman in the world I cannot do without. And if at the end of it you send me away, I will go, and count the having known you the greater part of my life regardless. He set something on the table between them, not the ring. He had not brought the ring, sensing she must give that back herself if it came back at all, but a single late rose cut that morning from a hedge along the northern road, half open and already bruised from the journey. I have nothing else to offer that you have not seen me waste, only this, and the certainty I should have given you 6 years ago and give you now. There is no urgency about anything else in my life. There is the most desperate urgency in the world about you. He bowed and turned to go, because he had said he would not press her, and for the first time in their long acquaintance, he meant a promise to her with his whole heart. He had reached the parlor door when he heard her move. Ignatius. He had not heard her say his given name in years. He stopped. When he turned, she had picked up the rose, and she was looking at it, and then at him, and the polished courtesy was gone from her face. What stood in its place was the thing he had counted on for 6 years and never once thanked, that steady, unguarded love, frightened now and warier, but there. Still there. She had not, it turned out, been able to fold it away after all, only to hide it, and waiting for him in the north it had refused to die. You will not promise me a wedding after the harvest, she said. It was half a question. I will not promise you anything after anything, he said. I am done with after. Marry me before the week is out, or court me until I have proved myself, or send me away and let me grieve you the rest of my life. Whatever you choose, choose it knowing I will never again make the mistake of believing you will simply always be there. You taught me that this week. I will not need the lesson twice. You ask me to believe, she said slowly, in 1 week, the opposite of everything you have shown me in 6 years. You must see how that is a great deal to ask. I do see it, he said. I am not asking you to believe me, Helena. I am asking you to let me prove it, however long the proving takes. If that is a year, I will take a house in this town and answer all its letters in my own hand for once, and you may watch me do it. I have spent 6 years asking you to wait for me. It is only just that I spend whatever is required waiting, hat in hand, for you. I come late, as I have come late to everything that mattered. But I come at last with nothing held back and nothing kept for later. And that is the one thing I never do before. And something in that, in the plain reversal of it, the great Duke of Calverstone proposing to wait upon a portionless woman in a borrowed parlour for as long as she pleased, reached the place in her that all his speeches about urgency had not. He saw the careful folded courtesy come loose at last, not because she had been argued into it, but because she had, after 6 watchful years, finally caught him meaning a thing with the whole of himself and acting upon it the same hour. She crossed the room. She was crying now, openly, and smiling through it, which was a thing he had not seen her since the garden 6 years before. She took his hand, the steady hand, the hand he had leaned on without thanks, and she pressed something small and warm into his palm and closed his fingers over it, and he did not need to look to know it was the garnet ring. Then we will not wait for the harvest, she said. They were married that Saturday in the small grey church with her aunt and 4 strangers for witnesses and no grandeur of any kind, and the Duke of Calverstone, who had kept her waiting 6 years for a worthy of his name, found that the only wedding worthy of anything was this one, where a man who had finally understood what he held stood at last, unhurried and unhesitating, and held it. He never again said there was no urgency. He learned, instead, to say the other thing, the true thing, and he said it to her every morning of their long life together, so that she should never have cause to wonder again. "There you are," he would say when she came down to the table. Not as a man notes the floor beneath his feet, as a man who has nearly lost the one thing he loves, and who has been given, past all deserving, the chance to spend the rest of his days being grateful for it.